The Challenger and Columbia space shuttle disasters served as sobering reminders that space exploration was still a new and a dangerous endeavor. But just as devastating as these two tragedies was the Apollo 1 catastrophe, which led to the deaths of its promising three-man crew. Back in 1967, 2 years before the historic 1969 moon landing, Virgil Gus Grissom, Edward H. White, and Roger B. Chaffee died while conducting training exercises in their spacecraft at Cape Kennedy Launch Complex 34. Grissom was open and realistic about the danger.
There is some risk. I recognize it, but just try to take as much of that out as we can during the pre-testing.
As with the later deaths of the crews of the Challenger and Columbia spacecraft, a NASA investigation at the time concluded that Grissom, White, and Chaffee fell victim to, quote, technical and management lapses.
There were problems that people knew about, but they hadn't been able to slow the train that was barreling down the track.
The three men died before anyone could attempt to save their lives, but they were aware of what was happening and left us with some final words. The launch, officially named the Apollo 204 mission, was going to be the first manned Apollo mission in space. At 6:31 p.m. on January 27th, 3 weeks ahead of the crew's intended launch on February 21st, Grissom, White, and Chaffee sat in their craft on their launch pad going through a countdown simulation. There were zero indications that anything was wrong with the spacecraft.
Then, there's a surge of voltage somewhere in the electrical system.
As the story goes, there was some worn wiring beneath Grissom's seat which had lost its insulation and was exposed to the air as electricity ran through the live wire. Crews outside sealed the module's 3 hatches and filled the air inside with pure oxygen. Then a small movement caused the exposed wire to spark, igniting the highly oxygenated atmosphere. And because oxygen makes things burn very quickly in its pure form, there was plenty of fuel for the fire to consume. The module cracked open and smoke started pouring out. The crew inside yelled for help and tried opening the hatches to escape, but to no avail. As NBC News recounts, brief cries from the crew came over the headsets. White yelled, "Fire!" and Grissom followed. Chaffee echoed, "Fire!" and the sound gets muddled from there. According to NBC News, Chaffee yelled, "Get us out!" while Astronomy.com says he yelled, "Let's get out!" Some accounts of the tragedy omit Chaffee's final line, but the New York Times says that before the crew lost contact with the outside, his last words were, "Hey, we're burning up."
Can you get a lot of this?
Crew, doctors, and rescue personnel raced to the scene, hoping to safely extract the 3-person crew, but it took 5 minutes to reach the men, and by then it was too late. Ultimately, Virgil Grissom, Edward White, and Roger Chaffee didn't die from burns, but asphyxiation. The module had been filled with combustible material, and the flames had quickly burned through the hyper-oxygenated air in the environment, leaving no oxygen for the astronauts to breathe.
That fire erupted. It was an explosive combustion.
The following year, in 1968, another Apollo launch successfully lifted off from that very platform. But in 1969, the year of the moon landing, the platform was decommissioned. By 1972, every part of the platform except the cubical concrete support structure was removed. Now, that structure has a memorial plaque embedded on its surface that, along with the lost astronauts' names, reads, "Dedicated to the living memory of the crew of the Apollo 1. They gave their lives in service to their country in the ongoing exploration of humankind's final frontier. Remember them not for how they died, but for those ideals for which they lived." In 2017, there was a memorial service at the site which was attended by Grissom's wife, who was 89 at the time. According to the New York Times, she said, "I don't want any of this forgotten. Gus Grissom was a human being." The Apollo 1 disaster might have wound up saving people later on. As a result of the accident, NASA established both the Safety, Reliability, and Quality Assurance Office and an independent safety board, the Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel. It also made many other changes to procedures, equipment, and materials, right down to astronaut spacesuits.